Afghanistan is facing one of its worst natural disasters in decades, and the world is barely watching. A devastating 6.0 magnitude earthquake has torn through eastern Afghanistan, killing over 2,200 people and leaving thousands more injured. Entire villages have been wiped off the map, families buried alive in their sleep, and rescue teams are racing against time to reach survivors trapped in the rubble. This isn't just another earthquake story, this is a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in one of the world's most forgotten corners, where every passing hour means the difference between life and death for countless victims still trapped beneath collapsed homes. So what exactly happened? And why are rescue efforts proving so desperately difficult? But to understand the full scale of this disaster, we need to look at where and how this earthquake struck.
We are in Khas Kunar, just few mountains away from the epicenter of the earthquake in Mazar-Dara. Mazar-Dara is a valley, and this valley has several villages. These villages were inflicted by the earthquake. Now, the official number of people who are killed is around 2,200, and there are around 4,000 people injured. But there are a lot of concern that many people are still on the rubble, and there is a kind of very difficult possibility to reach there. It's a very mountainous area. Even a helicopter cannot land there. Rescue teams are finding it very difficult to reach that area. There's no internet, no telephones, no SIM cards working. Even we are suffering from this issue. We're trying our best to get there. According to journalists here and other observers, it is very difficult to go there by a car even. So we might get there by a car close to there, then we'll have to walk for around 2 or 3 hours, along with the rescue teams who are trying to reach the villages. So there are still hundreds of people on the rubble, and they're feared to be dead. However, there's no possibility to do anything right now with this difficult geography here in the area. Ali Hashim.
The magnitude 6.0 quake hit just before midnight on Sunday, August 31st, in the mountainous region of eastern Afghanistan, near the border with Pakistan. The epicenter was located in Nurgal district, Kunar province, with the earthquake occurring at a shallow depth of just 8 kilometers beneath the surface. This shallow depth proved catastrophic. The closer an earthquake occurs to the surface, the more devastating its impact on buildings and human life. The timing couldn't have been worse. Families were asleep in their homes when the ground began to shake violently. Within seconds, entire villages were reduced to rubble. The earthquake struck multiple provinces simultaneously, with Kunar province bearing the brunt of the devastation, followed by significant damage in Nangarhar and Laghman provinces. What makes this earthquake particularly deadly isn't just its magnitude, but the type of buildings it destroyed. Most homes in this region are constructed from mud bricks, wood, and stone, materials that simply cannot withstand seismic forces. These traditional building methods, while suited to the local climate and economy, become death traps during earthquakes. When the walls collapsed, heavy wooden and stone roofs crashed down on sleeping families, crushing them instantly. The destruction has been overwhelming. Taliban government officials report that over 8,000 homes have been completely destroyed, with entire villages simply vanishing from the landscape. 3 villages in Kunar province were completely razed to the ground, leaving nothing but debris fields where communities once stood. The human cost continues to climb with each passing hour. As of the latest reports, the death toll has reached over 2,200 people, with more than 4,000 injured. These numbers represent only confirmed casualties. The true toll may be much higher, as rescue teams have yet to reach many remote areas where victims remain trapped under collapsed structures. Taliban spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid confirmed that the casualty figures were primarily from Kunar province alone, suggesting that as rescue efforts expand to other affected areas, the death toll will likely continue to rise exponentially. The United Nations has warned that this could become one of Afghanistan's deadliest earthquakes in recent history, potentially surpassing the 1998 earthquake that killed over 4,500 people. Behind each statistic is a family torn apart, a community destroyed, a life cut short.
A general update on what is happening with respect to the earthquake, and then my colleague, who's the area manager in the eastern region of Afghanistan, Anatoly, who's also online, will give some of his first-hand experience of what is happening on the ground. Now, as everyone already knows, on August 31st at close to midnight, there was that 6.0 magnitude earthquake, which struck the eastern provinces in Afghanistan, leaving a wake of destruction in mostly mountain communities across three provinces, Nangarhar, Kunar, and Laman. Since then, including this morning, there have been strong aftershocks, which continue to rattle the region, further terrifying families, but also worsening road conditions and hindering rescue and relief operations. Unfortunately, and this I heard from my UNICEF and UNFPA colleagues, some of the relief workers got injured from yesterday's quake as well. The human toll is high, and I think, Steph, you reported on this. According to the latest assessments, more than 2,200 people have lost their lives, and nearly 3,700.
Survivors describe their desperate conditions, families sleeping in open fields, too terrified to return to any remaining structures, constantly shaken by powerful aftershocks that threaten to bring down what little remains standing. Children have been separated from their parents, many of whom are presumed dead. The psychological trauma extends far beyond the physical devastation. The rescue operation has become a race against time, but it's a race being run uphill, literally. The earthquake struck one of Afghanistan's most challenging terrains: steep mountain valleys, narrow roads, and isolated villages that are difficult to reach even under normal circumstances. Now, with roads blocked by rock falls triggered by continuous aftershocks, many communities remain completely cut off from the outside world. Taliban authorities have organized 155 helicopter flights over just 2 days, evacuating approximately 2,000 injured people and their relatives to regional hospitals. But helicopters can only do so much in this mountainous terrain, and many areas remain inaccessible even by air. The government has deployed dozens of commandos who are being airdropped into locations where helicopters cannot land, tasked with pulling survivors from the rubble and carrying them to evacuation points. The Taliban government has established coordination camps in the affected areas, working around the clock to organize rescue operations.
We have no kitchen to cook meals and prepare tea or do anything for ourselves. It's the third day. Our children are spending day and night in a makeshift shelter, and we have not received any first aid.
2 of my nieces, an 11-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy, were trapped under the rubble and unfortunately passed away. It was a bad incident.
There's fear because of the earthquake. There are many aftershocks. The mother of the child sitting beside me has also got injured. Her leg is broken. She's in the house, and we cannot go inside the house. We are spending day and night in the field. We have left our rooms.
These camps are serving as bases for medical triage and the heartbreaking task of organizing mass burials for the hundreds of victims being recovered from the rubble. But the challenges facing rescue teams go far beyond difficult terrain. This earthquake has struck a region already devastated by decades of conflict, economic collapse, and international isolation. Afghanistan's healthcare system was fragile before this disaster. Now it's being pushed beyond its breaking point. The World Health Organization has announced an intensified emergency response, seeking $4 million to deliver essential health interventions and expand mobile medical services. The WHO's emergency team lead in Afghanistan.
All of the above. Quite frankly, the assessment teams have been out in most of the districts that they can reach. Roads are still impassable. The higher in elevation you go, the more fissures there are, and it's very difficult. We're setting up temporary sites to get assessment teams to camp out and then go back into the villages. So And connectivity is a huge issue for us, where teams are on the ground collecting a lot of data, but it's very difficult to get it uploaded into our system so we can do the analysis. You've already cited the most recent data from the de facto authorities on the death toll, and the injured is over 3,600. Structures, over 6,000 structures. We anticipate this number to continue to increase, unfortunately, given the severity of the earthquake and the shallow depth of the earthquake going forward.
So, Amy, are there still areas you haven't managed to reach, and what is hampering the relief efforts?
Captured the urgency of the situation perfectly. Every hour counts. Hospitals are struggling, families are grieving, and survivors have lost everything. The organization reports that urgent needs include shelter, water, food, and sanitation, while impassable roads and connectivity issues continue to hamper assessment teams who are camping out in remote areas trying to reach victims. The medical crisis is compounded by a stark reality. Many of the region's health facilities were already closed or suspended due to massive cuts in international aid funding. Over 420 health facilities across Afghanistan have been shuttered due to lack of funds, with 80 of them located in the eastern region now devastated by the earthquake. This means that the remaining medical facilities are completely overwhelmed, lacking sufficient supplies and personnel precisely when emergency trauma care is most desperately needed. The international response has been limited and slow. While some countries have offered assistance, Iran provided 80 tons of flour and cooking oil, India sent 1,000 tents and 15 tons of food, the UK pledged £1 million in humanitarian aid, and the UAE dispatched food, medical supplies, and a search and rescue team. The scale of help falls far short of the massive need. The European Union has pledged 130 tons of emergency supplies and €1 million in assistance, but humanitarian organizations warn that this is nowhere near sufficient for the scale of the disaster. The limited international response isn't just about the earthquake itself, it's tied to the complex political situation surrounding Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Since the Taliban seized power in 2021, international aid to Afghanistan has been drastically reduced. Humanitarian funding dropped from $3.8 billion in 2022 to just $767 million in 2025. An 80% decrease that has left the country's humanitarian infrastructure in tatters. Many donor countries, including the United States, have been reluctant to provide aid due to concerns that funds might end up supporting the Taliban government, which has imposed increasingly restrictive policies on women and girls. These political considerations are now directly impacting earthquake response efforts, leaving ordinary Afghans to pay the price for geopolitical tensions. The Taliban government, recognized by only a handful of countries including Russia, has appealed for international assistance, but the response has been limited. This creates a tragic irony. The very people suffering from this natural disaster are the same ones already suffering from man-made political and economic disasters. The earthquake has also highlighted another humanitarian crisis that was already unfolding in the region. Many of the affected residents were among the millions of illegal migrants who had been forcibly deported from Iran and Pakistan in recent months. These returnees were already living in precarious conditions, often in temporary shelters or overcrowded housing, making them even more vulnerable when the earthquake struck. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, estimates that more than 500,000 people have been affected by this earthquake, with many others becoming internally displaced as their homes and communities have been completely destroyed. This adds yet another layer to Afghanistan's ongoing displacement crisis, where millions of people are already struggling to survive. What makes this disaster even more tragic is that it was entirely predictable. Afghanistan sits in one of the world's most seismically active regions, where the Arabian Plate subducts beneath the Eurasian Plate to the west, and the Indian Plate pushes northward into Central Asia. The country experiences regular earthquakes, and this latest disaster is the third major earthquake since the Taliban took power in 2021. In October 2023, Western Herat province was devastated by a magnitude 6.3 earthquake that killed more than 1,500 people and destroyed over 63,000 homes. Before that, in June 2022, a magnitude 5.9 earthquake in Paktika province killed over 1,000 people. The pattern is clear. Afghanistan's vulnerable building construction, combined with its challenging geography and limited emergency response capabilities, creates the perfect conditions for massive casualties when earthquakes strike. Yet despite this predictable vulnerability, little has been done to improve building standards or emergency preparedness. The current rescue operation is revealing both heroic efforts and heartbreaking limitations. Medical teams from organizations like Save the Children and Médecins Sans Frontières have deployed to the affected areas, but they're working with severely limited resources. Local hospitals are reporting that they're treating injured children who have been separated from their parents or relatives, many of whom are presumed dead. Dr. Sharafat Zaman Amar, spokesperson for Afghanistan's Ministry of Health, described these as painful and unbearable moments, sharing images of children with visible injuries and bandages, alone and traumatized. The psychological trauma of this disaster will extend far beyond the physical injuries. Entire communities have been wiped out, extended families destroyed, and survivors left with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Many are too afraid to sleep indoors, even in undamaged buildings, due to continuous aftershocks that serve as constant reminders of the Earth's instability. The aftershocks themselves have become a secondary disaster. A 5.2 magnitude earthquake struck the region on Tuesday, just as rescue efforts were gaining momentum, causing additional rockfalls and forcing rescue teams to temporarily halt operations in some areas. These aftershocks are not just geological events, they're psychological weapons that terrorize survivors and complicate every aspect of the rescue operation. As rescue teams continue their desperate search for survivors, time is becoming the enemy. The critical window for finding people alive under rubble is typically 72 hours, and that window is rapidly closing. Each passing hour reduces the chances of finding survivors, while increasing the likelihood that rescue operations will become recovery operations. The scale of this disaster extends beyond the immediate earthquake zone. Afghanistan's economy, already devastated by international sanctions and aid cuts, will struggle to absorb the costs of reconstruction. The country lacks the resources to rebuild thousands of destroyed homes, replace critical infrastructure, or provide long-term support for the tens of thousands of people who have been displaced. This earthquake has also exposed the broader failure of the international community to maintain humanitarian support for Afghan civilians, regardless of political disagreements with the Taliban government. The reduction in aid funding has directly contributed to the closure of health facilities, the suspension of emergency services, and the overall weakening of Afghanistan's disaster response capabilities. The international community now faces a moral test. Will political considerations continue to override humanitarian imperatives, or will the scale of this disaster prompt a renewed commitment to helping Afghan civilians? The answer to this question will determine not just the immediate response to this earthquake, but the long-term trajectory of Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis. For the survivors of this earthquake, the immediate focus is on basic survival, finding shelter, accessing medical care, and searching for missing family members. But their longer-term challenges are even more daunting. How do you rebuild a life when everything you owned has been buried under rubble? How do you maintain hope when living in a country that the world has largely abandoned? The stories emerging from the disaster zone are both heartbreaking and inspiring. Neighbors risking their lives to dig through rubble with their bare hands, searching for trapped families. Community leaders organizing distribution of the limited AI that's available. Medical workers treating patients in makeshift field hospitals, working without adequate supplies or equipment. These individual acts of courage and compassion stand in stark contrast to the broader international neglect of Afghanistan's humanitarian needs. They remind us that behind the statistics and political complexities are real people showing extraordinary resilience in the face of unimaginable tragedy. As the immediate rescue phase transitions into recovery and reconstruction, the challenges will only multiply. Afghanistan needs massive international assistance to rebuild the destroyed communities, provide long-term support for the injured and displaced, and strengthen disaster preparedness for future earthquakes that are certain to come. But will this assistance materialize? The early signs are not encouraging. Despite the scale of the disaster, international media coverage has been limited, and the global response has been modest compared to the enormous need. This reflects a broader pattern of neglect toward Afghanistan since the Taliban takeover, where legitimate concerns about the government's policies have resulted in collective punishment of the Afghan people. The earthquake in eastern Afghanistan is more than a natural disaster. It's a test of our shared humanity. It's a reminder that when the earth shakes, it doesn't distinguish between political systems or ideological differences. It simply destroys lives, and those lives deserve our attention, our compassion, and our support. The people of Afghanistan have endured decades of conflict, economic collapse, and natural disasters. They have shown remarkable resilience in the face of unimaginable hardship. But resilience has its limits, and those limits are being tested by this latest catastrophe. As rescue teams continue their desperate race against time, as families search through rubble for their loved ones, as medical workers struggle to save lives with inadequate resources, the world has an opportunity to show that humanitarian values transcend political differences. The question is whether we will seize that opportunity or allow another tragedy to unfold in one of the world's most forgotten corners. The earthquake in Afghanistan is not just their disaster, it's a test of our collective conscience. And right now, we're failing that test.